Good morning, grade 11s. Today we're going to look at the second part of avenues of acquiring businesses. Last week we looked at franchising as a way or a method of acquiring a business as opposed to starting your own business from scratch, and we looked at the advantages, the disadvantages, and what all of those things entail if you are considering opening a franchise instead of starting your own business. I also gave you a little short exercise to do where you had to investigate a little bit, and I hope that you came up with some very interesting information on the franchise that you would like to open one day. Right, so today we're looking at the second avenue of acquiring business or a business, and that's not necessarily starting a business. This part that we're looking at, which is called outsourcing, is where you basically take a part of your business and let an outside party manage or run that for you. Okay, so the meaning of outsourcing is when a business buys goods or services from another business to do the job instead of the business performing the function themselves. One of the reasons for outsourcing is that the business may not have sufficient capital to purchase equipment to perform a specific function. I would like to add to that, or you do not have the manpower, the knowledge, or the skills to perform a specific task as well as which another business can do or is doing. So, say for example, you have a sole trader or perhaps even a small partnership business going. In many cases, the owner is responsible to handle all the different business functions. And sometimes you just don't have all those skills and knowledge. If we think of one of the popular functions to outsource to an outside business is HR, human resources. We've been talking about different acts and laws, the minimum wage, leave, things that change constantly. So if you don't have the knowledge on that specific function or for that specific function, you can get yourself into big trouble if that function is not performed properly. And especially in small businesses where there's perhaps not a lot of people or many directors or board members or people like that, it might be your best option to outsource certain functions to other businesses that specialize in that specific job or service or product. All right, so what are examples of outsourcing? Look, yeah, the first one there would definitely apply to Mrs. Boyens. If I had a business, I would most definitely outsource anything IT related because you know me and technology. But that includes things like the management of your IT system, your computers, the can even be like your website, the technical stuff, hard drives, programs, something like that. In many cases, the business that's providing the service for you on your behalf can do it much cheaper than you can do it yourself. We'll get to that at the advantages. Then very important, legal outsourcing. As we've just said with regards to HR, there's so many laws, labor laws, laws with regards to trading, forms of ownership laws, etc., that it might be very for you, worth your while, to actually outsource any legal requirements to a lawyer, a lawyer firm that knows what exactly needs to be done and how law should be looked at. Then security, if you can just think at the situation at school. The school is there, but we don't provide our own security. We outsource the security to a security company. Why? Because that company knows exactly how to secure premises. They've got people who are trained to look after our school premises. So therefore, it's a good idea to, in many cases, most cases, to outsource that to a specific business or enterprise. Then some businesses outsource cleaning. If I think of your hospitals, your big corporate companies, they might not necessarily employ people to clean their offices and their buildings, but they will outsource that whole function to a business or a company that specializes in proper cleaning. Can we think of a better example now again with COVID-19 in our midst, how important proper sanitation and cleaning is. And not everybody knows how to do it properly. Business owners don't know how to do it properly. So therefore, it's best to then get a specialist in, outsource that function or job to a specific specialist in that area, and they can come and do it for you. Recruitment. Once again, because it's attached to various laws and the fact that you must not be discriminating against anybody. If you prepare an advertisement and you want to put it in the newspaper or on social media, your advertisement needs to adhere to certain rules and regulations. If you're not aware of that, you can actually get yourself into a lot of trouble. So many businesses decide to outsource the recruiting function, where they pay a portion or a percentage over to the recruiting company, for example, and then that business does all the scouting, looking at the curriculum vitae that's coming in, placing adverts, and basically do the whole screening process and only send you the details of the best candidates. Then normally, if you are employing that person that's been referred by the recruitment agency, you will pay them a further amount or a percentage of that person's salary. But many businesses outsource recruiting up to a certain point in the whole recruitment process. Then transport. For many businesses, it's much cheaper and more efficient to outsource their fleet of vehicles to another a business company that's specializing or that specializes in transport. So instead of having your own vehicles to drive around or your delivery trucks or whatever, you outsource that function to a specialist company, and they will handle your transport for you. Staff training. Once again, if we think of technical aspects, maybe learning how to work on a new program. Some people are very good at teaching others how to do something or learn a new skill, but other people aren't natural trainers. So then it's best to source, again, outsource that function to a business that specializes in teaching and training people in a specific field. Then call centers. You can actually, if you have a type of business where you get a lot of inquiries, either via email or phone, you can actually have somebody who answers those calls or the emails on your behalf. Can be not, they don't even have to be on your premises. They can do it from a remote area, then also again pass on the information as needed to you. Computer installation and maintenance, I've basically looked at that at the first point. Then accounting functions such as managing salaries and wages, especially if you've got a big staff, it might be worth your while to get an accounting package, or a business that actually does the bookkeeping on your behalf, running the payroll every month, paying over, making sure that the money is paid over to the receiver of revenue before the 7th of each month, sent schedules and forms to the unemployment insurance fund, etc. All those things need to be done, and in many cases, as a business owner, you might not have the knowledge, the skills, or even the time to deal with all of those kind of things. There's something I wanted to say there as well. Even your bookkeeping services, where you need or you ask somebody to record your transactions or journalize your transactions, draw up your income statement, balance sheet, and so on. But remember, grade 11s, I've said that how many times before, you never lose control of your finances. You can outsource some of these things, but you as the business owner must know where every single cent is, and you must be able to account for that. That would really be one of my last functions to outsource if I were in that position. But for example, you can perhaps do the salaries and wages if you feel comfortable in outsourcing that to a different or another enterprise or a business. Then something that we always need to think about is people need to eat, especially once again, if you're a large business or enterprise, you might have a canteen function. or tuck shop type of setup where people can order food or buy cold drinks, coffee, and so on. Many times it's not done in-house, but it's again outsourced to another party, where they then run the whole setup. Either you pay them a fee for their effort and time, or they actually pay over a portion of their profit or their turnover to your business. So it depends on what the arrangement is. Once again, if we think of our school, we know that our tuck shop is run by an outside party and not by the school itself. And there's obviously various reasons why that was decided. So this gives you a good idea of what type of functions, business functions, can be outsourced or generally outsourced. Good. What are the disadvantages and advantages of outsourcing? And once again, grade 11s, we must look at both sides, and it will differ from business to business. For some businesses, it might make perfect sense to outsource HR, and for another business, it might not. So you have to look at your specific situation before you decide which functions to outsource and which ones not. Obviously, remember, it always comes at a cost, and you need to weigh up the pros and the cons. Let's first look at the advantages. Outsourcing allows the business to focus on the important business activities rather than support activities. This is very true, especially if we look at small businesses. In many cases, the owner is already stretched thin, overburdened with a lot of tasks. So now what happens if there's so many things that the owner has to focus on, he sometimes or she loses a focus of the most important things. For example, acquiring new clients, or proper advertising, or marketing, or whatever the case might be, because they are bogged down by the smaller administrative stuff, which is also very important. So it makes a bit more sense to then decide, okay, these are the things that I as the owner have to focus on, but this and this function I can perhaps outsource to a business that will do it probably much faster and more efficient than I as the owner can do. A business has access to resources and equipment for a specific function. So it means in many cases, let's say you outsource your canteen function. In most cases, it means that you don't have to go and buy all the equipment and the tools and whatever is needed. The business that's handling the outsourcing function, or that specific function on your behalf, they would be responsible for that. If you perhaps outsource your IT requirements, then there's lots of things that they will perhaps bring in where you don't have to pay for equipment, have a huge capital layout, and at the end it can save you a lot of money. The production team is often shortened, and quality is often improved because specialists are performing the function for the business. So this means because you're focusing on your core business, it takes you less time to perform your functions and that will make you more efficient, and that's what we want, because at the end that will lead to greater profit. A company or business is able to reduce costs, as outsourcing can lead to a decrease in staff, remuneration, control, and operating costs. So obviously, well, from a business point of view, that would be an advantage, that you do not have to pay a certain number of staff. If you don't have that function, you don't need to employ people to do that specific function. That then automatically shows that this indicates that there will be a reduction in cost, operating costs for the business, which ultimately will lead to more profit. The business can focus on its vision or goals to apply its staff more effectively in its core business. That ties up with the first one, where we said we then focus on what is the most important thing that we need to do in this business. Improve access to skilled people, as the outsourced work will be done by highly skilled people without the company or the enterprise having to employ them. So you have that knowledge to tap into, that expertise that you have to tap into, but it's available, but they're not necessarily working for you. One thing that we need to remember is, the moment you employ somebody, you're not just employing that person, you're employing that person's children, the grandpa, the house, the cat, the dog, the fish. All of those things form part of the package if you employ a person. Now, if you outsource functions, those you are paying those businesses to perform a function for you. You are not employing them. All right, so that makes quite a difference on your staff and the things that you have to deal with staff-wise if you outsource certain functions. Then outsourcing will provide continuity during periods of high staff turnover because it's done by an outside organization. If there's staff who's joining or leaving your enterprise, those functions that are outsourced usually remain quite stable. We do acknowledge that they can also have staff turnover, people coming and going, but in general, the type of functions that they perform might not necessarily be attached to a specific person. So it creates continuity in the business, which is very important, especially in today's times. So those are all your advantages that you can look at. And let's now have a look at the disadvantages of outsourcing. First of all, remember, if you are allowing people into your business sphere, there's always the risk of losing sensitive data and the loss of confidentiality. I mean, if you outsource your, let's say, your HR function, then that organization that's handling all your human resources, your staff, perhaps your salaries and wages, they know exactly how much you're paying your staff members, who is employed by you. They can maybe share that information with a competitor of yours. There's always the risk of losing some confidential information. So you obviously, when you choose a business that you would like to outsource a function to, you need to do your homework very well, look at this business reputation, and do some research. Don't just trust the very first organization you come across to handle a certain function for you. Do your research very well. Risks such as bankruptcy and financial loss cannot be controlled. I think that's got to do with if your outsourcing business maybe gets into financial trouble. That's something that you can't control. Then you will have to go and look for another business to take over that function, and that can be a bit of a up and down in your business. Lack of organizational learning and innovative capacity. What this means is, instead of trying to solve a problem on your own or trying to find a way of dealing with this function, even if you might not have the skills or the knowledge, by outsourcing it, you actually take that opportunity away to learn and to grow yourself and to improve yourself. So that might be a disadvantage. You might think you're not very good at something, but maybe if you put in a little bit of effort, you'll realize that you actually can manage with that. So if you just outsource, that opportunity goes by. So once again, that might be a disadvantage. Managing the outsourced provider could be more difficult than managing employees. Yes, that is the truth. Sometimes getting or outsourcing a function creates more trouble than rather dealing with it in-house. I'm just thinking of sometimes say you now have a new computer package that you have to use. You've installed it now, but you are now relying on the outsourcing enterprise to give you training or to give you telephonic assistance, etc., because you're not managing it in-house. Now something goes wrong. You phone, okay, no, they're not available, they're not picking up. You email, they're not responding to your emails. So now you're waiting. You can't do much on your own because you do not have the knowledge or the skills, or you have to now go and find somebody else, which will cost you more money. So in many cases, or not in many cases, in some cases, it actually proves to be more of a frustration than in outsourcing a specific function than dealing with it yourself inside or on the inside of your business. So once again, you must do your research well. Don't just take their words for it. Ask for references and hear from people who are already using this business for a specific function to see what their experience is. Otherwise, it might be more of a headache than a pleasure to outsource specific functions. Right. There's a few more. Confidential issues could be at risk if the information is given to another company who performs the function that's outsourced. We've mentioned that. There's always that risk. Outsourcing can create a crisis for the business if the outsourced provider suddenly terminates its contract. For some reason, they might say, listen, we are not providing the service anymore, and now you are left in the dark, especially if you don't have any warning. So that is unfortunately part of life, and that is something that no one can foresee or predict, but it can be a disadvantage. There may be a lack of personal care or quality as the business is not personally involved in the execution of the function. There, for example, if we look at recruiting, now you are giving that whole first step and first introduction part to an outside organization. So you're losing the opportunity to actually sift through the potential employees. They might look at it, and obviously they should be the experts, so they might look at it differently than you would have, and maybe you would have appointed somebody completely different from what you are getting from the employment agency. So unfortunately that can be a disadvantage. Hidden costs and legal problems may arise if the outsourcing terms and conditions are not clearly defined. Obviously, please once again read the contract before you sign on the dotted line. Make sure that you know if you are outsourcing this function to a specific organization, what are you going to get in return? Because you have to pay for that. Okay? So you must make sure that you are on the same page as the outsource provider, so that you do not have an idea in mind that this is what they must provide, but actually the contract says something else. You have to understand what type of service and to what extent you will get that service. Losing management control of business functions mean that the business may no longer be able to control those operations. Once again, if you outsource the IT function, you're not really in control of that anymore. If you outsource the HR function, you have less control than what you would have had if you did it yourself in-house. Not understanding the culture of the outsourcing provider and the location where you outsource to may lead to poor communication or lower productivity. Once again, if you do not understand the whole setup and how your outsource provider operates, that might create problems. You might have an expectation, but because you do not understand where either parties come from, that might create a problem in your relationship with each other. Problems with quality can arise if the outsourcing provider does not have proper processes. Once again, that comes back to research. Please make sure that what they say they can do, they actually are doing. Please don't just believe all the promises that they make. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. They have to show you what they have done and what they have achieved, maybe with other clients as well. That is very important. Remember, you pay them a lot of money. Important functions are being outsourced. An organization is mightily dependent on the outsourcing provider. So, for example, if your accounting function is outsourced and the outsourced provider is not submitting tax returns on time or not preparing your income statement and financial, your balance sheet, that might lead to huge problems. And then you don't have the control because you have now given them the information. You have to wait for them. So it puts you in a powerless position. So it is very important to make sure before you outsource a function. Outsourcing provider may work with other customers. They may not give their full time or attention to a single business or company, resulting in delays and inaccuracy in the work output. Obviously, you will not be the only client. But remember, the client always thinks that he or she is most important. So now you might have to wait in line. If there's maybe a big technical outage, let's say cables are stolen or whatever, and lots of people need to be helped, you might have to wait some time. I know, for example, in my personal capacity, I still am with AfriHost, and if there's a problem with the data or the coverage in a specific area, and I have problems with my emails, I'm not the only one. They are hosting my emails and my what do you call it now, server, but I'm not the only client with them, so I have to wait my turn. And sometimes that can be highly frustrating, especially if you need to get something done very urgently. And usually it happens when you do not have any time to deal with any emergencies. And then the last sentence there, inaccuracy in work output. Now, if they've got lots of clients on their backs to have things sorted out, it can happen that the outsourced provider can make mistakes, and that can be a costly mistake for you as the business. Now, very important, labor unions are opposed to outsourcing, especially where labor brokers are used. Now, this has happened a number of times, especially with your bigger organizations. A few years ago, my mom works for the Northwest University, and they wanted to outsource their cleaning function, the cleaners, and there was a huge thing. I think they actually had strikes on campus where the trade union said no, the cleaners will be paid less if they are going to be outsourced to a different company or a business. They're going to lose some of the benefits that they have if they were employed by the university. And at the end, I think it took months of negotiation. The university with the trade unions then decided that they will not outsource the cleaning and sanitation function, and that those employees would stay with the university as opposed to be taken over by the outsourcing provider or cleaning provider. So it definitely has an impact on labor, and where labor unions or trade unions are concerned, they do not like the outsourcing function at all. Why? Remember, if you outsource, you are not employing somebody. That outsourcing business, they employing, but you're not employing the outsourcing provider. And for trade unions don't like that, because they say people are losing out on job opportunities. Right, last little bit, contractual implications of outsourcing. Obviously, please draw up a contract. No, we believe each other and we trust each other and that kind of thing. A contract will protect and regulate the rights and responsibilities of both parties, because remember, you can't also expect things that are not stipulated in the contract that must now be performed by the outsourcing provider. They're usually charging you a fee or a percentage or something connected to how long they will provide that service. For example, 1 hour support per day or 2 hours per week, or whatever the case might be. Some aspects that must be included in the contract are the following: the exact description of the service and product, obviously, so that we know what we're talking about, how long this contract will be. Is it a 6 month contract? Is it month to month? Is it for 2 years? You know, that must be negotiated. A detailed description of the duties and responsibilities of both parties. So what you as the business owner or the business will be handing over, and what your responsibility is. For example, if you don't give the information that the outsourcing provider is asking for, they can't do their job. So those things need to be clearly defined in the contract. Then confidentiality, obviously, if any information is disclosed, it is only for those parties and it cannot be shared with any outside party, because that would be breach of contract. Payment terms and conditions, is it are you paying at the end of the month? Are you paying upfront? How does it work? Do you pay a percentage of a specific job? That will have to be stipulated. And then penalties for not delivering the agreed services. There, once again, normally those type of providers have contracts drawn up. So it's like a service level agreement. I don't know if you've heard of that before, SLA. So both parties have to keep to that service level agreement. If I outsource my internet functions and service hosting of my server, and AfriHost says that they will come back to me in, let's say, 24 hours or 48 hours, they have to keep to that agreement. Yes, we're working with people and people can make mistakes, but at least we have something to hold one another to. And for example, if there's a trend that ever so often the outsourced provider is not keeping to the terms and conditions, then it can go over into penalties, maybe not full payment, etc., or even where you can go to the termination of the contract without any further payment to the outsourcing business. Right, grade 11s, this was then the second avenue of acquiring business, which is then outsourcing. The last one we'll look at in our next session is leasing, which you've also looked at in grade 10 already, so it shouldn't be too new. But hopefully you now have an idea of what type of business functions could ideally be outsourced in the business environment if you have a business one day. And you can also think in an entrepreneurial way about that. Functions that can be outsourced are also good business opportunities, business ventures. So maybe you can go into labor law because there will be a huge demand from different businesses to outsource that function to an enterprise or organization. So you can actually look at it both ways from a business owner's perspective. Right, I'll see you then again for the next session. Hope this helped a bit to clear up some of the matters here.